Kultz, and I'm the Executive Director of the Career Development Center. One question we often get is, should I go to graduate school? And sometimes it is the logical next step, especially if you're in the sciences, medical, law. You need that next degree in order to become gainfully employed. You also want to ask yourself what type of education is typically needed to enter your field. Is it absolutely important for you to have that degree? Doing informational interviews can be very helpful in gathering that information. So just as you would do an informational interview with someone in a career field of interest, you would do this similar with different graduate programs. Would a few years work experience enhance a graduate education? So this is another thing that sometimes graduate programs like to see, is that you have a year or two of experience under your belt before you apply and go on to graduate school. How can that be beneficial? Well, you're coming into a classroom that's upper level with some knowledge that you can contribute to conversations, to discussions, to assignments, to papers, to projects. So sometimes there is that benefit. And then another concern or question we get is, are you trying to delay the real world? And that's something that is realistic in looking at the state of the economy today in 2020 and looking at where things might be going. It might be that a lot more students are considering this route of going on to graduate school. Not a bad thing as long as you do your research and you have that understanding of what your purpose is. You want to go on to graduate school for something that you can see yourself specializing in, something that is going to become your long-term goal, maybe your lifelong passion, whatever feeds your soul. So definitely really take a close look at not only programs of interest, but internally, what is it that drives you? Is it the logical next step? Is it needed? Can you get a year or two experience before you apply? And then some other questions that come up are also in terms of that funding. How will I pay for graduate school? And looking at programs to see if they offer graduate assistantships, teaching fellowships, and ways for you to fund that. So that's something important that you want to look at as you really take graduate school, the process seriously and moving forward. I want to go, but where do I start? So 4 things are critical at this point. Do you want to go full or part-time? Do you want to go on a campus physically, or do you want to do it online? But there's also that hybrid option, half on campus, half online. Are you willing to relocate? And what type of admission test will you need to take? Not all programs require a graduate admissions test, but definitely going on to law school, there's the LSAT, med school, you have the MCAT. There are other tests for pharmacy schools, for other medical professions. You have the GMAT for business programs, and then the GRE seems to be the catch-all for other areas. But definitely take a look and see if it's required, because if the school you're applying to is a top one for you, and maybe there's 2 or 3 you're applying to and they don't require it, you don't want to invest the money and the time if it's not necessary. I would encourage you to visit the Career Development Center, both in person or remotely, virtually. We have free copies of U.S. News and World Reports, information on the best graduate schools, graduate school guides, to give you that additional boost and assistance in doing your research. Speaking of research, you want to make sure you're investing that time. So taking the time to examine schools of interest. collegechoice.net is a really good resource, not only for looking at undergraduate programs, but looking at graduate schools as well. So I would encourage you to take a look at that site and start to peruse schools that have your programs of interest, or find out schools that have your program of interest. Another way to find that out is talking to your faculty members. Your faculty are more often than not master's degree holders, doctoral degree holders that have gone through graduate programs, and they might be ones of interest to you. So in part of that informational interview gathering that we discussed, not only considering interviewing the school itself, but other folks that might have gone there, or your faculty, previous supervisors, what would they encourage you to pursue? So factors to examine before visiting schools. So what are the things that you want to be looking at as you're exploring your programs or schools of interest? What's the reputation of that program? What's the length of the program? Is it a 1 year? Is it a 2 year? Is it more than that? And then once again, keeping in mind financially how that fits in. Academic concentrations within a program. MBA programs, for example, they're not a catch-all. There are different concentrations. You can go finance, you can go human resources management, you can go marketing. So try to get a good understanding, not just on a program, but if there's concentrations within that program. Look at the faculty closely. Do they have full-time faculty? Or is there only one faculty, or they're all adjuncts, or you can't find any information in terms of research they've done, achievements they have. So doing your research on faculty, you can do that through LinkedIn, through a simple Google search, or looking at the university that they teach at, that website. So definitely explore that. Alumni testimonials, there's nothing wrong with calling a program and asking if you can speak to an alum or someone who's currently in the program. And then just to reiterate that financial aid piece, it's not impossible to get your education covered by the schools that you go to because of things such as stipends, graduate assistantships, research practicums, but also thinking about if you're going to work for a year or two before going to grad school, sometimes your companies will help offset the costs. So it's important that you know that if you are working and you are going to think about going to graduate school now, having those conversations with your hiring manager. So we talked about researching, but how do we narrow down those choices? Taking all factors in account, try to narrow down to your top 3. Because once again, just as you did when you were undergrad or applying to other schools, you have to pay. There's a cost. So you want to make sure that you're investing your time and your resources, monetary resources, wisely. Visit those 3 schools, whether it be a virtual visit or it be an on-site visit. Speak with faculty, current students, admissions, once again knowing the tests that are required, and then begin preparing for those admissions tests. Let's take a look at the graduate school admissions timeline. This is not specific to any graduate school or program. It's an overarching broad timeline that most schools you're going to see follow. So we're looking at this right now from the standpoint of I'm a college junior looking to go to graduate school. So I'm going to start looking the summer, fall of my senior year. So you want to carve out that August to November time frame to test prep, work on those applications, ask people to write recommendation letters for you. Work on that personal statement. You'll see that the November to end of December is what's often deemed the early deadline or early admission. Many application deadlines will be December into January. Some programs do have a rolling admission that would go from November until April. A lot of graduate programs do have an April 15th deadline, but that's not to say it's absolutely set in stone. So it's important that as you look at the timeline, you're seeing it's almost a full year of preparation and planning. So looking at things like the test prep, the asking for letters of recommendation, updating your resume. So keeping that in mind of what needs to get done at different points along the spectrum. So what is it the graduate admission factor? What are the graduate admissions offices looking for? You've got both the quantitative and the qualitative factors. So quantitatively, they're looking at standardized test scores and your GPA. Also looking at the qualitative, so we discussed application essay, letters of recommendation, your experience in extracurricular activities, and then there usually is an interview as part of the process. What I tell individuals to do, and looking at tip 2, focus on what you can still change. So what is it in your wheelhouse right now? Think about yourself this summer, fall. What can you be working on? It could be those application essays. It could be practicing those interview skills, or taking a class or 2 to help boost the GPA. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about where you stand along the quantitative, qualitative factors, and where you feel that you can enhance and grow. The grad school application. What are they looking for? These are the top 3 areas that graduate professional schools across the board have said have been of utmost importance in weighing their decision of bringing a student into a program. Academic ability. They want to make sure that the student is serious about the program, that they know why they're going on to graduate school, that they are coming from a university where they were in good academic standing. Someone who has experience in and passion for your chosen area of study. Getting internships is not only important for going on to a career field or job field of choice, it's also important for that graduate school. So are you able to use an experience that you've had career related in your application essay or while interviewing? And then the third item there, character. They really want to know that you are someone of good character, good standing, and they can use your recommendation letters often as a good judge of character of what others are saying about you. So what are important questions to answer within grad school applications? Why do you want to go? Why are grad school rather than others? And why is now the right time to go to grad school? So what you can do is start to brainstorm even before you get into your personal statement draft is, can you address these 3 questions? The why do you want to go, why that school, and why is now the right time? In a way, looking at tip 3, you're developing your elevator pitch. What's your story? And knowing that just from a networking standpoint is so helpful. So start to think about those 3 prompts there, and how would you respond if you were put in a situation where you had to give an elevator pitch? How do grad and professional schools use personal statements? Essays are the best way for admissions officers to determine who you are. Don't hesitate to go beyond your current experience for essay topics, and feel free to discuss past events that in part they define who you are. Give some thought to how your past and current experiences have contributed to your intellectual, personal, and professional. So select a few stories from life experiences that showcase your qualities, your characteristics, and write about them. And maybe your first draft of your statement, and I would encourage it, is to be a big brain dump and to write down anything that comes to mind that you feel makes you you, and that shows that you're an asset to a program, that you are able to contribute and make that program an even stronger one. Important do's and don'ts. Let's take a look at this as you start to think about, how am I going to craft that application essay? Also keeping in mind, who's my audience? So going down the left-hand column here, you want to provide evidence, stories that illustrate who you are, how you've developed, and what matters to you. Discuss your intellectual and career goals, demonstrate a fit with each program, and this is so important as you work on your personal statements. You want to, just like you would a cover letter, tailor a cover letter to a job, you want to tailor some of your application essay to that program. As you read about the program on their website and you see something with their mission statement that you connect with, or you see that they recognize one of the faculty members for some amazing research they did, referencing that. Allow the schools to infer your traits and values, and include personal insight and rationale for your motivations. Looking at the right-hand column there with the don'ts, here's some cautions. Don't recycle your resume or transcript. You're sending your resume and your transcript as it is. There's no need to turn that personal statement into just a repeat. They can see that, they know what's there. So what is it from your resume that you couldn't fit on writing that you can elaborate now in that personal statement? It's not a plea for help. Don't think being qualified will qualify you. Don't include a laundry list of personal traits. So it's not just listing every skill word that describes you, but really articulate it and show how. It's that notion of show and not just tell. And then last there, don't speak negatively of anyone or anything. You never know how small the community is within your area of study, and it's just important that we continue to speak in the positive. Or as we've been taught growing up, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. But most important is being unique, and that's really going to show your passion. Another slide of some do's and don'ts to think about. Draw on all of your experiences. Just because an experience is not directly related to the field, to the program, let's say you had an amazing summer job working as a lifeguard and you actually had to save a life, and you had to communicate with emergencies teams, and you had to communicate with the parent of the child or whatever that may be. But then looking at it from the standpoint of what are my soft skills here? What are the transferable skills? And how does that relate? And how does that make me an asset to the program? So don't limit your experiences. Sometimes speaking about one that is correlated to research or work you've done in that field that you're looking to pursue further. And also an experience that really highlights your leadership, your time management, your ability to think on your feet. Connect your working experiences to your story. So if you were to take that example of being a summer lifeguard and having to save someone's life and relaying that information of thinking quick on your feet and having to go into emergency protocol and how that worked for you, translate that into how does that fit with making you successful in a graduate program. Show how you are unique and what you'll bring to that program. Make it a sales pitch, but a sincere one, and always follow directions. Don't forget relevant academic, professional, or volunteer experience. You absolutely can talk about volunteer experiences not only at DeSales, but in your community as well. Don't assume your experiences will speak for itself, so you don't want to just allude to it and not explain. Don't make assumptions about how you're viewed. Don't provide any reason for rejection. So what that means is no typos, making sure that you're tailoring it to the program that you're applying to, that you put your passion into it and gave specific examples, that if there was an actual prompt, sometimes graduate programs have a prompt for you to respond to, that you're addressing it and you're keeping it within the page limit they're asking for. So don't give them any reason to quickly write you off. And then lastly here, don't pontificate, use cliche words, wallow in emotion, or get needlessly fancy. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece. It doesn't have to be a novel that's going to be sold, at Barnes & Noble, but you want it to definitely speak to your character. The most common mistakes that graduate admissions offices and programs will notice is not demonstrating personality, character, and motivation, not demonstrating a fit with the program, writing what you think the admission officers want to hear, and then the spelling, grammatical errors, or wrong school name. I know it seems kind of funny, but it does happen. So if you are writing 3 separate personal statements and you want to use a couple lines from one and the other 2, and you do some cut and pasting, that's okay, but you need to make sure you're not cut and pasting the school name from the previous school you applied to and then having it read with the wrong name by the admissions office. So be careful that you always proofread, knowing your audience and making sure that you're exhibiting that fit. Let's talk about the 4 steps of writing that application essay. We went over some good do's and don'ts. We talked about knowing your audience, what graduate schools are looking for, but how do you even get started? How do you take it to that next step? Brainstorm is the first thing. Remember I had mentioned telling stories and not being afraid to share different stories. Come up with them and start to brainstorm. You can look at your academic career for those stories, extracurricular activities, employment experience, goals, accomplishments, significant life experiences, failure or setbacks, intellectual and career goals, key attributes and experiences you want to convey. How do you want to be remembered when they are finished reading that essay and they put it aside to go on to the next applicant? What is it that you want for them to hang on to and say, wow, I will never forget that story? So choose them carefully. Talk about the plan. So you've brainstormed, let's plan it out. Choose the best examples. So going back to, did that school, that program have a certain prompt or question? Or was it more of a broad, why are you looking to go on to graduate school in XYZ field? So go back to that prompt, go back to what they're asking, and then look at your brainstorm of examples. Which one fits the best? Create brief outlines for yourself. Tell stories interestingly, yet professionally. Try audio recording. One thing that can be helpful is that if you're better off with speaking, take your phone and just start freely talking and record it. And then you can always go back and transcribe that. But sometimes free talking will help for you to get out a little bit more comfortably what it is that you're trying to write down. So try that audio recording. Utilize basic storytelling principles. So there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And keep an organized structure. So you want to have a flow. You don't want it to be choppy where the paragraphs don't connect. So in that opening, you want to make sure that you are kicking it off and really telling that or showing where that passion is coming from. Your body is the meat of that, and giving those examples to enhance or to take that opening a step further. And then you have your conclusion, your closing, really reinstating the passion and the connection you see with the program and the field that you're going into. So step 3, we're really going to work on writing it now. Have a hook. One of the key things I hear time and time again, whether it be for law school, medical school, MBA programs, it's that hook. Start the essay strong. It's the first impression that matters. But I also say don't stress out over it. Don't feel like you're having to dig deep for the most impactful example that you think exists. Look at it and say, what is important to me that has shaped my life thus far that I can put down on paper that really shows I'm invested, that I've grown, that I've developed, that I've overcome. So that hook is important. That's going to help you keep it engaging and interesting. Don't stop when you hit the page limit on your first draft. So that's why I was saying earlier, just free write, let it flow, or use that phone and just keep talking and keep talking. Let it all out. It's going to help you get all the thoughts down, and then it's going to allow you to smooth it and massage it into that beginning, middle, and end with those transition sentences. So show, don't tell. I wanted to share some examples of hook ideas to catch the reader's attention. You can open with an unusual detail, opening with a strong statement, opening with a quote, opening with an anecdote, opening with a statistic or fact, opening with a question, or opening with an exaggeration or outrageous statement that you go on to explore or tie in. But I always say these are some great ideas to think about when you're trying to decide what that hook is for you. You want to be careful that you're not just falling into the, well, I want to help people, or I've always enjoyed the opportunity to be around others and make them feel better. So that notion of helping led me into the psychology field. Too broad. You want to rein it in and look at the hook piece that really is saying, this is why I want to go into a graduate counseling program with my psychology bachelor's degree. And maybe you had an awesome internship experience working in a mental health facility and helping people overcome hurdles and come up with plans of action for them and moving forward. So what is it that hook, that story piece that's just going to kick it off and catch their attention? And step 4, edit. Absolutely edit, edit, edit. Ask yourself, how will this sound to grad schools? What does this say about me? Be sure you've gotten your key messages about who you are across, and then get qualified feedback. Here's recommendations of having 4 people, yes, 4 people read your essay. Someone who knows you well, that they can read it and say, okay, this sounds just like Sam. Someone who doesn't know you at all, I don't know Sam, but now after reading this, I have a pretty great understanding of what Sam wants. Someone who knows graduate schools well. So someone in the Career Development Center, a faculty member, someone that can give you the guidance that, yes, this is the hook or this is the direction you want to go with your format. And then someone who's a great writer, who can help you clean up your punctuation, your grammar, and having that eye for the little details. So using someone in your writing center, or if someone is in your life that is a good, strong editor or writer, definitely turn to them. Always remind yourself, typical personal statements are those that could have been written right by any applicant. The best personal statements are those you could have only wrote yourself, that only you can sign your name to. And that's how I often look at personal statements that I review, is when I read through it, I say, I can't sign my name to this. It's so unique to the individual who wrote it. So keep that in mind as well as you're writing and as you're reading through. So here are the next steps. You've just sat through this presentation. You've learned a little bit more about the application process, about how to explore graduate programs and write that statement. So what's next? Absolutely plan to prep for and take standardized tests if needed. Research graduate programs in detail. Determine the deadlines at your programs of choice. Set up a timeline and plan to tackle the applications, and start brainstorming your essays. I want to just reiterate, your Career Center is here for you. We are here to help you through the graduate school process, whether it be helping you with applications or reviewing personal statements. It's something that we take a lot of pride in doing and working with our students to help them have powerful personal statements that truly get to the heart and soul of who the student is, who you are, and what it is that you're hoping to do with your future career goals by going on to graduate school. So continue to follow, like, and connect with us. You can reach out to myself, Melanie, Kathy, or Aubrey, and we'd be more than happy to work with you. Continue to follow us on the social media that you see on the screen, because we'll continue to have summer updates and things going into the fall to continue to assist you with your graduate school process. I thank you for your time. I hope that you enjoyed, and I look forward to working with you.